Welcome to Communication Graphics. Today we're going to take a brief virtual tour. This will help to serve as your safety tour instead of trying to have 20 plus students walk around the room trying to point out different pieces of equipment. Of course, as you know, as you already walk into the area, there can be quite a few people piled up in the locker area. But one of the things you want to be aware of when you first come in, depending on what class, somebody before you may have been working on a piece of equipment that may be out that is not normally out. You always want to be careful not to start handling things that may or may not be something you've been trained on. One of the first things you see on your right-hand side is a light table, and it is for the purpose of laying out negatives so that you can look at your image before you head to the darkroom. This negative is actually a little too dark, which is why you really can't see that. But if I move it to a different light, you can look up through the images. The backlighting of the light was messing that up. But one of the things we see at the station is also an air compressor over here on the left-hand side. And when it's engaged and turning on, you can, blow your, well, oops, didn't mean to quite do that. But, yeah, you hold the negative in your left hand and you very gently dust off your negative. So anyway, if you stick that in your eye, it's not going to turn out well for you. We do have a hand sanitizer station. Also, just as you walk into the room, it is a good idea to go ahead and sanitize your hands anytime we take out the cameras, the film or digital cameras. I do want you washing your hands. Sanitizing really doesn't do the same job because, well, all it's going to do is just rub around the dirt on your hands. So I do want you to wash your hands. But any other day, use the hand sanitizer. Stick your hand right up underneath there and you'll be in good shape. And then we also see one of the most dangerous pieces of equipment. Nobody's gotten hurt on this, but when you see red, red is dead. And that's a bad sign right there. So that red square on top is to let you know that if that guard is not in place, be very careful. But this is a bulk paper trimmer. You could stick an entire ream of paper. And you can see one that I recently cut in half. This entire ream can be cut 500 sheets of paper at a time. And it literally will cut it about as easily as you can cut 3 or 4 sheets of paper at a time. One of the unique things about this facility also is the need to have rolling pieces of equipment, tables. I've put a lot of things on rollers so that we can move them around, including tables. You want to be careful not to sit on any of the tables. This table has wheels on it, for example, and that way it can come out and be used at different times of the year for different purposes. Of course, you've also had your picture taken at this point. Most of y'all have, and you know that when you sit up underneath the lights, we can take really nice portraits with the pulley system in the backgrounds that can come down, and we'll get a chance to work with that at some point this year. But a lot of times we'll take pictures in different classes and the lights will be down and out in the open. So as you're walking through the facility, you want to be careful to make sure that nothing is draping down in your way. Our portrait studio area does have black curtains that are pulled down, and part of the rail system and the curtains is to make sure that we have isolated light in that section. Of course, this area here, as I've mentioned, is to duplicate your lockers so that your locker number equals your slot number, and this is used for drying your prints when you come out of the darkroom. There's paper up on top. The purpose of this paper is to make sure that you don't put any photos on top of another piece of photo paper. So like in this case right here, we have 2 photos, 3 photos. These have dried and they're okay. They can be touching each other. But when you have your photo in the slot and you put another photo on top of it, then you're going to damage your paper. And so we use this blotter paper over here. Well, not that one, because you don't want to put anything that's dirty up there. So you put that on top of it, and now you can put another print on top to allow those prints to dry overnight if you don't have time to put them in the dryers. We do sort prints first, second, third, fourth, sixth through the 7th period. If it comes out of the darkroom and we don't know whose negative it is or whose print it is, we put it in these vertical slots right here. If we don't know what class it came from, we put it in this section over here. So if you ever lose your picture, look in this section right here, and if we know what locker number it is, then we will go ahead and file it in one of these slots right here. So it is important to label the backs of your prints the best you can. The next hazard that I want to go over are the trimmers, which those that are entering the Texas Rice Festival may have used these just today. But these trimmers are very, very safe. You use them for the magazine assignments as well. There is a light switch on top to effectively use this. You rotate the knob on top. It does take a second for it to turn on. It is one of those compact fluorescent bulbs, and that's so you can see where the paper is lining up. And this does make a very micro fine trim, which you really can't get with a pair of scissors. One of the next hazards I want to point out to you is the mounting presses. We have 2 of them. These do heat up to about 220 degrees. They do have a safety, a jerry-rigged safety right here, which is a piece of Velcro to keep that handle. With that, when that's not in place, it can flip forward and pop you in the forehead. And that actually has hit a student before. It's also hit me. One student, was enough, but didn't really get hurt too bad. But just be very, very careful with that. We do keep that locked up, so I'll come back and do that in just a minute. We also have tacking irons. These tacking irons are when the light switch is turned on right here. That means that this is heating up. After about 5 minutes, this surface right here will melt through nylons, plastics, skin, things of that nature. And now the tacking iron only heats up to about 180 degrees, but if you put that up against your skin, it's going to melt. So you want to be careful with that. And you don't know when this has just been turned off, especially for third period coming in right after second period. So if the light is off and you bump up against that, it could still burn you. So be very careful with that. As we move around our mounting station, we also see that we have 2 very large blocks. And these are for pressing your prints. We probably have a print underneath this right now. When we lift this up, and you want to be very careful lifting that up. You could definitely hurt your wrist. Underneath it, it's where our prints go. And these are prints being prepared for the Texas Rice Festival. And it's okay to stack them on top as long as they don't shift around. But you want to be very, very careful lifting this into position. And I'm not kidding, that is quite heavy. If you drop that on your foot, well, you won't be walking around very well for a while. And over in this section here, we have a new piece of equipment, new for us anyway. This is a new print dryer. When you come out of the darkroom, you'll put your prints right into the opening of this and turn it on if somebody doesn't have it on before you. And you put your prints right into the mouth of that opening. We'll make sure that they're squeegeed in the darkroom the best they can be. And then on the back side of this, which I have yet to rig up a system, there's supposed to be a little catch right here that catches your print, and we'll try to find it where this was located prior to the summer before it was donated to Westbrook, and I'll try to find that for us. But we do want to turn that off when we get our prints out of there. And then as we back out of the room right here, some normal hazards you want to be careful of. It's just the fact that coming out of the darkroom it might be wet. And there's just a lot of unknown things that may go on in this room. For example, down at the bottom is a pretty serious paper trimmer. And we use that to cut up our paper safes. And the blade on it is quite the guillotine style blade. Nobody's gotten hurt with that, but I am usually the one that does the cutting on that piece of equipment anyway. And as we prepare to go into the darkroom, the first area that we're going to walk along as we follow the yellow brick, line, that is, we're going to see several warnings. Please be aware of those warnings. And one of the biggest challenges as we go into this light trap is that your eyes are adjusting from a bright room, and you literally cannot see if somebody's coming around the corner. As the camera goes to almost complete darkness here, so will your eyes. Now I've left open a door right here which will normally be closed. There is a little light up at the top that puts a little bit of light in this room, but for the most part, you're coming into a dark room and your eyes have dilated, or they haven't adjusted for the darkness yet. They have not dilated to let the low amount of light into your eyes. But as you continue to follow the yellow line, eventually you're going to wrap around into the dark rooms, into the dark room, and we should be able to get a little light right here as we start to see the three-eyed monsters over there. The light in the room is amber because that is going to be safe for the equipment, for your paper. So for the purpose of the safety tour, I've gone ahead and turned on the lights. But when you do walk into the dark room, it is going to be quite dark to your eyes. Now once you're in here, it gets to be quite bright. And then the challenge becomes when you go back out into the brightness. Now the person leaving the dark room generally needs to say beep beep, as well as the person coming into the dark room, so that we know who is coming in and out of the dark room, but more importantly, so that the person that's coming in that cannot see as well is letting the person that's coming out know that somebody is coming into the dark room. And that allows us to keep from colliding into each other. So the stations, each of which you've been assigned to, wrap around the room. We have 12 darkroom stations, and each of the enlargers have their own timer and work area where you'll be enlarging your negatives. So we'll be placing a negative into the enlarger and shining your light down onto an easel and focusing your negatives, doing different things. With your negatives, you'll be able to raise the enlarger up and down, deciding on how big you want your image to be. In the center of the darkroom, between the two rows of stations, are the chemicals. We have developer, stop, and fixer, starting on the west side of the room, moving to the east side, followed by 2 water baths. And then we also have a light inspection station. There are 3 trimming stations back here, trimmer station C, as well as trimmer stations A and B. The clothesline line that you see hanging here is just a jerry-rig system so that you can hang your prints to dry without actually having to exit the darkroom. And over here where our print trimmers are, you'll notice that there's some signs. We do allow music to be played in here. There's an MP3 connection for you to be able to hook up your iPad or iPod. As long as it doesn't have an active cell phone connection, you can disable or go to airplane mode. We don't want to stream any music back here, but if you have music on your iPod, you may play music. The key is to make sure that it doesn't go on and off with messages coming in, because that could contaminate and flood the dark room with white light, and white light from a cell phone will ruin your piece of paper. But as we prepare to exit here, a couple things to keep in mind. It does have a special surface on the ground. It needs to be swept right now, but you can see where people have been standing. But this is a rubberized mat, and it just makes it a little softer to stand on. And the only catch, though, is that when you've been standing in the same place, it's anti-fatigue, which means that it drops down just a little bit while you stand there. And then when you get ready to go and move, all of a sudden your foot is stuck. And it's not terrible, but it can make a little bit of a hazard. So just keep in mind as you're moving around in the dark room. You know, with 8 or so students in here, it's a really nice working room. With 12, it is going to be packed. And each of the classes have, you know, anywhere from 10 to 12 students going to be in this room. So just a few things to keep in mind about the dark room as we exit back on out. And you can see what the light trap looks like with the light on. And we'll exit on back into the room here. Always be careful about leaving the dark room with dripping prints to make sure that you're not bringing excess water into the room. So as we wrap up, as you've been looking over your lab safety sheet, which goes over a lot of general safety tips to keep in mind for any particular facility, but specific to this lab, one of the most important things is that you ask for permission rather than forgiveness. And that's always the right thing to do. The perversion of that saying is that it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission because you know that you might be told no. That's not the right way to go about things. You know, I'm generally going to give you permission. I may need you to do something later or not quite right when you're asking, but just always keep in mind that we want to keep a safe environment. There are a lot of hazards in here that you may or may not be aware of. Lots of other different things include aerosols that may be out, paints. There are other pieces of equipment that come out at different times of the year. Binding machine, paper jogger. There's just a lot of different things. So just keep in mind that I may know something that you may not. And one of the second most important things is that if something is starting to break, if you will let me know, I can generally keep it from breaking all the way. If something is loose and it is allowed to lose the bolt connection, or something falls apart, sometimes that may actually lead to a dangerous situation, and it may also end up in a damaged piece of equipment that cannot be repaired easily. So always let me know if something's not working. Don't force anything. Be very careful of the water. Don't shoot any water at anybody. Most of that stuff is pretty common sense. When you sign this piece of paper, you have agreed that you will be on your absolute best behavior in this lab. We only use the darkroom in the first semester, but it is absolutely a privilege, and I would definitely not have a problem just assigning you bookwork and let you do questions and vocabulary based on darkroom. So anyway, it's a great experience. I think you're going to love working in the darkroom, and the class as a whole generally is very safe. So just help me keep everything up and running and working smoothly in here.